Thanks for watching. In this video, this is actually something that I think is maybe one of the most important things about NPD, and maybe even the cause of NPD, which I'm kind of surprised I haven't heard much about in psychology or in other videos. So this is actually something that to me is very important and may really be a good explanation of NPD. And what I'd like to talk about is how in almost every case of NPD or even antisocial that I have seen, I have noticed a notable sort of like the mind is more sped up, like a faster speed of the mind, kind of like on high alert or just kind of like being on speed, maybe. Um, Maybe very similar to hyperactivity, ADHD, maybe in the same kind of category. But I've just noticed that people that have NPD seem to be on kind of high alert. Maybe their mind is more alert, but sort of kind of on hypervigilant, or I don't know, just kind of more. I get the idea the brain is kind of sped up, you know. So again, this is just an idea. I'm not a psychologist, but the idea is maybe to look at how maybe through genetics or through conditioning, maybe it is possible for the mind to be kind of on maybe too alert, maybe too vigilant, maybe it's like a crisis mentality, you know. But the idea is that maybe it's kind of like when we see people on certain drugs, like say on speed or on cocaine. There's some kind of typical personality characteristics that always seem to come out of that. And I think one of them is that I think a decreased amount of empathy, maybe, a decreased amount of concern for other people, sort of a decreased amount of patience, um, sort of an increase in just being concerned about getting your business advanced and maybe not so much concerned about your impact on other people. So how can it be such a coincidence that when someone is on speed, they sort of get into the characteristics, even arrogance, you know, aggression, dominance, that, you know, it's not exactly like NPD, but it's so similar that I have to wonder whether it's really a full coincidence, you know. So I do think that what I've observed in people that have NPD, that they're just kind of maybe revved up faster, that their mind is kind of on speed, so to speak, you know, that it just can't be a coincidence that that's correlated with arrogance, dominance, not being too concerned about others, not being too not having extra a sense of impact on other people, you know. And so I do think that when we're kind of sped up, I think we start to lose the ability to process, you know, concern for broader issues, for maybe being concerned about our impact on others, and, you know, just having a broader conscience, so to speak. So I really would like to look at how, in my opinion, NPD does arise out of sort of the mind operating at an unnatural speed, or at a speed that just doesn't allow for certain things that we consider part of a normal conscience. So and then the other thing I want to look at is how maybe part of the reason why the personality sticks and it becomes sort of permanent is that maybe the body becomes adapted to maybe a different chemical nature of being fast. You know, maybe being fast has more adrenaline, and maybe the body becomes sort of accustomed to a different adrenaline level, a different sense of urgency of getting things done quickly. And so if you suddenly unplug that, what you're going to get is a tremendous sense of being like impatient, like critically bored, like serious boredom. Like you're used to having things happen fast, you're used to having quick satisfactions. And so if you're to unplug that or get away from that urgency, it might be like a withdrawal. Like you're not getting the adrenaline that you're used to, the quick satisfactions, you know. And so it might be that the body, in a sense, kind of rejects that, or is very uncomfortable. You know, so people kind of go back to being quick and to wanting things quick. And so it may be hard for the personality to sort of give up, almost like, I'm not going to say a drug addiction, but it may be very similar to how people get addicted to the adrenaline state of being on cocaine or being on speed. That coming off it, it's like a withdrawal, and the body kind of resists that because the body sort of adapts to the chemical state that it's used to. And also maybe a person who's used to being fast and having things kind of in the speed modality, it might be really hard for that person to understand a different way of getting benefits from not being sped up all the time. That they're just not conditioned to that way of thinking, and so I think that may explain why the personality gets kind of stuck in, let's say, the speed profile, being on speed, so to speak. Um, and you don't have to take a drug to be on speed, because just being on high alert, maybe growing up, and what I think, my theory is that it's not so much abuse. I think it's not so much trauma. I think trauma is different. I think trauma is, I don't know, or maybe it is similar, but I think what's really going on, what really produces this high mental speed, is crisis, an atmosphere of crisis, an atmosphere where you're sort of taught from a young age by your parents, you're sort of born into an atmosphere of everything's sort of chaotic, everything's kind of on the edge, more edgy, and then everything's just kind of reactive, more, more vigilant, more reactive, kind of a little bit more feral, wild, and so everything's kind of fast, just kind of edgy, you know. And so that crisis atmosphere just kind of brings a different state of adrenaline, a different state of impatience, sort of an edgier, whatever. And then when your body gets kind of accustomed to those adrenaline levels and just that modality, it's kind of like you're on speed. It's just you're on speed from an atmosphere of crisis. It's just a mental state, you know. So I really do think that from that point of view, I think we can look at NPD as just either through pure genetics or through exposure or through conditioning, that a person just gets into kind of some people might call it like ADHD, just kind of revved up, hyperactive, just a different mode of the mind. And as we know from coke and from cocaine and meth, whatever, speed, we know that people, when they get revved up, their so-called empathy will go down, their conscience will kind of go down, they'll get a little more kind of selfish, a little more aggressive, dominant. And so to me, that I think one of the keys to unlocking the characteristics of NPD, and maybe even kind of disentangling the traits, is to focus on exploring, and it may go against all of our comfort, because we may really have a withdrawal. It may kill us, the boredom, the lack of tempo, the lack of satisfaction. But I really would consider exploring to treat NPD, to do things over, like, say, months and months, but to get people to kind of bring down the basic speed, just learn not to have satisfaction, maybe just to learn to eat less, to have less flavorful food, just to maybe adopt a boring routine, but just to get yourself down a little bit. Now, what I've found is that over the years, I've tried to do that, actually, to become more boring, more routine. And I've found that my metabolism kind of wants to go back to the fast. It's like I think it's gotten into my DNA, or on the cellular level or something. So I think my tendency will always be to go back to the vigilant, sped up, kind of, hypervigilant mentality. But I still think that if we can sort of explore just even artificially slowing ourselves down, I think that can help us, at least explore how we can work with our traits, and sort of, if anything, just give ourselves just a little more opportunity to not be so sped up. And because I think once we get sped up, I think the effects are almost automatic. I think it's almost automatic that you're gonna feel kind of less for people. you're going to have different types of emotions. And so once that speed gets up there, I don't think we have much control over our character at that point. So, it's just an idea. I mean, I don't know. I think, I'm not even proposing that I'm right, but what I think is that sometimes we have to be concerned that maybe psychology has a lot of just conventional sort of categories and just ways of thinking, that sometimes it's good to get out of those categories and experiment with different ideas, just because there may be something to it, And so I really do think that that it is important to look at mental speed as something to address, to experiment with, to think about as we try to understand what produces the cluster B phenomenon. And in my opinion, I think it's probably something very parallel, something very similar to what we see with people who are on cocaine or meth, heroin, that kind of thing. I think it's probably not, maybe it's not exactly the same, but it's probably related enough that we should really consider the possibility that there may be a different adrenaline level, a different mental speed going on with the cluster B, particularly narcissistic, borderline, antisocial. So anyway, just an idea, and with now that we have this idea, I think it'll make more sense in another video to talk about the locus of control, because I do think that the locus of control will change depending on our mental speed. So anyway, thanks for watching, and yeah, that's it.